Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam. Thanks for that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening, and nice to meet you all. So the first thing I wanted to do is just start off with the basics, really. If anyone has seen a one-person show, just stick your hand up. Yeah, a few people have seen a one-person show. Great. So, of those of you who have seen a one-person show, would somebody like to tell me something that they took away from it? Now, this can either be something that they really enjoyed about it, something that they thought was particularly effective. Perhaps it's something that they thought that didn't quite work for me. If you're going to pick that one, please don't choose one of my shows. That's all I'd ask. So if anyone's got anything they took away from a one-person show rather that they saw, Ginny, yeah.
Hi everyone. I know quite a few people in the room. Yeah, I saw Bryony Kimmings. I'm a Phoenix bitch, and it was brilliant, but it was really heavy. Like it was hard for her, and I mean it was grueling. So she had physical theatre parts within that, which I later came to understand was part of her grounding herself, to make sure that she didn't, suffer from the fact that she was doing some really heavy stuff. I mean, psychologically heavy stuff. Yeah. So I thought that was a really great idea.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Ginny. Thank you. A message from Ben who says, I felt the direct address really helped the message seep in for the audience. Yeah, and of course that is the great tool that we've got to play with, isn't it, with a one-person show, is the direct address to the audience, bringing the audience on that journey with us. Suzanne has said, one, I saw a lot of movement, which helped it not feel static. Another involved costume and props. I think that's a great point, Suzanne, about it not feeling static. We've got a bit of extra work on our hands when we're creating a one-person show. It's one person and it's the audience, and how do we keep that kind of lively and engaging and keep things moving along? Has anyone else that's seen a one-person show got anything they'd like to talk about? Yeah, Claire Eden. Yeah, hi Claire. Yeah, hi.
Hiya. Yeah, I saw Julie Hesmondhag's favourite play under the massive long title that
Oh, wide world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was really struck by how powerful simplistic aspects of storytelling can be. So she uses, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but she uses different pairs of shoes to denote different characters that she's narrating the stories of. And I just found that really, really powerful, actually. Like, just such a simple reference or gesture meant a lot to the audience, and everybody was sort of with her in creating those characters from something so simple.
That's lovely, Claire. Yeah, absolutely spot on. I saw that myself, and I thought that just sort of the simplicity of it, when we are telling a story and it's just one person on the stage, how do we bring in those other characters that we want to help us tell that story? What devices can we use? Lovely, thanks, Claire. From Nick Kirby, we've got seen a few, including Nathaniel. Yep, Nathaniel J. Hall's first time. Excellent. Audience participation worked well. We've already broken down that fourth wall, haven't we, with our direct address to the audience. We can play around with involving the audience if we so choose. Anyone else got any? We've probably got room for one more if anyone wants to throw something else in there. Yes, Angie.
Multi-rolling, so physically changing your characteristic and your voice to show different characters.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something I will definitely talk about today. It's a gift in many ways for a performer, a one-person show. It really is. You can really show off your acting chops, taking on these different these different characters. How do we create them physically? But also, how do we as writers make those transitions nice and sharp, nice and clear? How do we help our actors out in those transitions? Fantastic. Thanks very much, everyone. So I guess what I want to start by saying is that, and it's been kind of expressed already with what we've heard so far this evening, for a one-person show, it is the it is the ultimate form of storytelling. It is one person on a stage taking an audience on a journey. One person shows they are inherently theatrical. You know, the style of, you use could be naturalistic, but ultimately you've got one person there on a stage sort of making magic happen, playing multiple characters, possibly going to multiple locations. It is theatricality at its finest, really. So I would encourage you all to embrace that. Don't shy away from, oh, there's just one person. No, enjoy that. Yeah, embrace it. We can go anywhere we like. We can do anything we want on that stage. The scope is huge because our audience have already sort of signed up for the fact that it is going to be stylistic and theatrical because it's a one-person show. So your possibilities are limitless. And that, for me anyway, is really, really exciting. Now, there's a few, I mean, I'm not going to call them rules. Let's say guidelines that, I'd encourage you to follow, and we'll sort of talk about this as we go through. But one thing to say is, as with, a lot of things in our industry, there's not a lot of definitive right and wrongs to this. I'm by no means the authority on the subject. What I'm going to be sharing with you is what's worked for me and giving you some advice based on personal experience. But that's why I don't like to call them rules, because often we can turn around and say, let's try it a different way. This is just me sharing some of my experience with you. So that leads us on nicely to our first exercise this evening. Here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to write in continuous prose about something that happened to you yesterday. And in this little story you're going to come up with, can you please include an interaction with another person? Feel free to embellish, exaggerate, make it stranger, make it more dramatic, make it funnier, have a bit of fun with it, play around with it, yeah? But as I say, please include an extract with one other person, a conversation with another person. Write it in the past tense, in the style of a diary entry or a novel. I went to the garage and I picked up the car. Keep it in the past tense and keep it as continuous prose. And it's a story from something that happened to you or something that you make up happened to you yesterday. Now, this is going to be the basis on the first half of this session. So what I'm going to do, just to allow you time to really get your writing going, I'm going to give you 10 minutes on this one. So we'll reconvene at 18:23. If you want to turn your cameras off, I certainly will be as well. So cameras off, on mute, give yourself some time, and just write away. Yeah, just have a little play around. Is everyone okay with what they've got to do there? Fabulous, grand. So we're back in 10 minutes. Okay, let's stop what we're writing there. And for those who are happy to turn the cameras back on, you can do so. Again, no problem if you'd rather not, or you can't right now, that's fine. Okay, so what I'm looking for right now is if we have any brave volunteers who would like to share their accounts of what happened to them yesterday, no matter how factual or fantastical it actually is. Now, Ben Hodges, there's a hand up there, Ben Hodges. Is that a current hand, or is that a hangover from the previous exercise? That's the question.
No, I was just offering to read out if no one else.
Oh, that would be fabulous, Ben, if you don't mind. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So, okay. Yesterday, I went to work at Gorse Hill Studios in Trafford. The morning consisted of a very tedious task: screenshotting scenes from a film about child criminal exploitation and putting them in a slideshow. It's hardly what you would imagine doing when you would be asked, what do you want to be when you grow up as a kid? Lunchtime came, and instead of our usual chef, Theo decided to use the lunchtime as an experiment. I don't know if his hypothesis was set to be, can I cook lunch for 20 people and provide a vegetarian option? But the conclusion was a definite no. He made enough for our young people who complimented him on the flavourful rice whilst he stealthily threw away the packet of Ben's microwave rice. In a way, I should be thanking Theo for his chili con carne attempt, as it gave me a great excuse to head to my favourite sandwich shop, Mia's. I've only ever met the real Mia once, but a bread roll empire stands as a firm landmark in Stretford.
That is fabulous. Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much for that. Brilliant. Great. Would anybody else like to share what they've written down? Claire Eden. Thank you, Claire.
No worries. I already knew I shouldn't have taken part. Who gets a job interview from LinkedIn, really? I don't know anybody. Anyway, I bothered to do my hair and makeup, and I even put a bra on for the occasion, but thank God for Zoom. At least I could keep my slippers on. I googled the company before, but I did a quick refresh just to make sure. Yes, it was legit. It was registered on Company's House. Okay, let's go. I logged in a couple of minutes early, look at me all conscientious, and waited for the ting. I wasn't quite prepared for the sight that greeted me. I mean, at least he was dressed. It could have been worse. But the shirt unbuttoned to the navel and a Chesh rug that would make Tom Jones jealous were not what I expected. Hi, Claire, good to meet you, he crackled against my earphones. I frantically tried to unmute myself. Why was this the most awkward social thing ever? Even worse than getting your skirt stuck in your knickers. Hi, Ed. Nice to meet you too. So, Claire, let me tell you a bit about the job and you can tell me a bit about you. We never got to the bit about me telling him. By the time Ed had explained how personal he expected his personal assistant role to get, I was already regretting the info he had about me.
Whoa, love it. Fantastic. Great work. Thank you very much for sharing as well. Okay, so we've all started a story. And what we've got there is essentially what will be the start of, or a section of, a novel. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into an extract from a one-person show, the basis for a one-person show. And it's all about moving the action now into the present tense. And there's a reason we do this in a one-person show. It's about taking that audience by the hand and leading them on a journey where the action unfolds before their very eyes. And what we need to do, as with all great dramas, is we need to put our protagonist in peril. If the action is narrated in the past tense in a one-person show, then it means that our protagonist is talking about events from the past in a position of wisdom and out of harm's way. The protagonist has survived this event, and now they're on stage and saying, this is something that happened to me once. And we don't want that. In a one-person show, we don't want the protagonist removed from the action. It's got to be live. It's got to unfold before our eyes. The audience, as in any other piece of drama, has got to worry about the fate of the protagonist. And that is why we really want to avoid, where possible, speaking in the past tense. When we do, it becomes a monologue. And there's a difference, for me, a key difference between a one-person show and a monologue. Now, monologues are frequently used in plays to give us an insight into a character as they recollect a previous experience in life and how it has shaped them. They can be really useful tools in plays when they're used to do that. And while there is certainly room in a one-person show for a monologue, for a moment like that, we want to keep the reminiscing to a minimum. We have only one performer, remember, to keep our audience engaged, and we need to help that performer with our script. So what we're going to do now, and I think for this one, I think we probably just need 5 minutes on this. Don't worry if you don't, do it for the whole extract. What I'd like you to do now is to go back to that extract of yours and put all of the action in the present tense, as though it is unfolding in real time. Does that make sense? Fab. Let's have 5 minutes on that. And again, feel free to turn your cameras off, and I'll call back at about 18:34. Let's pause that there. Doesn't matter where you're up to, and let's see if there's anybody not named Claire or Ben who fancy sharing what they've done this time round. Let's see if we can get to. Yes, lovely, Angie. Thank you very much.
The day is quiet. It's still. The house is quiet. It's still. There are 2 bodies in this house, alive, and they are busy. One is working alone at the dining table, computer on, headphones in. The other is banished to the spare room, banished to the spare bed. Poor Trev has COVID. Trev is surrounded by disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer. I ask him, "What do you want for lunch?" "Oh, just a sandwich, please." I make the sandwich, bring it up the stairs, place it on the floor outside the room, and quickly push it through the open door. We exchange a handful of pleasantries, but there's no usual banter. There's no in-depth discussion about the minutiae of our daily antics. There are no hugs. It's simply a transaction of food to a hungry, sick, contagious boy. The interaction feels sad, but with the cheese and coleslaw sandwich comes hope. Soon the threshold will be crossed again. Soon the banter will be back to normal. Though soon I'll be fighting over the remote control again, unless I hide it.
That's great, lovely. Thanks very much, Angie. Taking us on a journey that I could picture you going through the stage in the different rooms. Lovely. Anybody else like to share what they've written so far? Maybe one more volunteer. Chris Salt raised hand. Oh, yes, thank you, Chris.
Cheers. So you knocked on the door and I'm in the shower, so she has to answer, and obviously that wasn't ideal since she tested positive and was dealing with that and also wanting to do the right thing. I can hear him at the door. He says he'll go back to the car, but I'm already pulling on my joggers. I bowl out the door, and there he is, deep into an audiobook of Jane Eyre. I mean, we're in Yorkshire, so perhaps that's a kind of set text for electricians. Puts his fingers to his lips, signals me to wait. Not going to lie, it's pissing down and I'm still damp around the edges, but we'd waited 3 months, so. It's that bit where a friend dies, gets me every time, he says. I nod. Never read it myself. I ask if he wants a brew, he says no, we'll be fine in a minute. She's put a mask on, I say. Got the windows open.
Lovely. That's great. Thank you very much. There was a lovely pin to pause halfway through that, and I went to come in, and then you came back in. It was great. Lovely stuff. Okay, let's move on a little bit again. Now let's think about being economical with our words. Let's make these scripts, which they're now turning into. Let's try and make them shorter, snappier, punchier. Can we give it a sense of urgency, as though thoughts are hitting you for the first time? Maybe take away a bit of the wisdom of hindsight. Lose the neatness. Can we strip it right back? Trust ourselves to deliver the message in as few words as possible. Can we take away the I said, she said, they said, and just trust the actor to be able to switch between those characters? Do we need to write out every single word that someone would say? Or can we trust that maybe an actor can deliver some of the nuance through their performance? And remember how powerful pauses can be in drama anyway, but particularly in one-person shows. There's a lot of talking, and when we lose that, it's powerful. Let's another 5 minutes on this. See how we get on with it. Everyone okay with the task? Great. Okay, lovely. 18:45 then. Let's stop it there. And one last time, does anybody fancy sharing where we've got to right now? This is, to me, the place where you want to kind of get at when you start writing those one-person shows, where the stage we're at right now. Suzanne, lovely. Thank you very much. Suzanne Elvidge, I should say. There's two Suzannes. Hello. Oh, you're on mute there, Suzanne. Sorry. Yeah.
Bother, I've spent the whole of lockdown saying to other people you're on mute. Row the channel, she said. It's in a good cause. And here I am, 10k off the French coast, in a one-woman boat, and the weather's getting worse. My muscles scream, my body's numb. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of the gym car park in this weather.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. Just so few words, just painting such a vivid picture. Beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. And do we have one more? Last volunteer requested. Everyone's like, I've nearly made it through.
I don't mind, Rob. I don't mind, Rob.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Well, we had Suzanne Batty and Rachel Price, so you can both go. So Suzanne Batty, thank you.
I think, am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you're unmuted. Yeah, you're grand.
Okay. It's only very short. Tuesday morning, community singing. I'd like to teach the world to sing, feeling groovy. What a wonderful world, that kind of thing. I've still got this thing in my head from this morning, a ticking sound, a memory, Dad not going to work, candlelight, Mum cooking baked beans on a primer stove, and what my girlfriend said to me when we got up, you're no longer my priority.
Fabulous.
That's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And you'll notice there's a sort of poetic quality to it as well, and that's in many ways what we are capturing with one-person shows. You know, I'd really encourage that. You know, there is a poetic quality once you start playing around with you know the number of words you're using in sentences and rhythms and all of that. Really nice. Thank you to both Suzannes. And finally, Rachel Price. Thank you.
I'm taking the bins out when this bloke walking past stops me and asks me for a light. It's pretty quaint these days, isn't it? No, sorry, mate. Patting my pockets like I've just mislaid my matches when no one smoked real cigarettes for about 10 years. Do you want to see an osprey? An osprey? Yeah? What is it?
Beautiful. Thank you. I'd love to see an osprey, to be fair, but that's great. And what you're doing there, which is lovely, is you're allowing your actor that the nuance and the switch between the characters, you know, and you're trusting them to be able to deliver those performances. And often it is what's not said, you know, do it with a look, that kind of thing. And you really, when you get to the heart of what you're writing there, you're allowing for your performers to really have some fun with it. So that's great. It is. It's lovely stuff, guys. Really nice work. So what I've got now, I've got a few. I mean, I'm calling them, you know, some other tips. And again, this is all just stuff that I've found has worked for me, and maybe some of this is something that will appeal to you as well. When going about creating this one-person show. Okay, so a few tips. So first one. You know, as we only have one performer, one narrator, one protagonist, the audience needs to care fairly quickly about this one person. Otherwise, our show is sort of dead in the water. Has anyone here heard of the save the cat technique? Yeah, a few nods. So this is a writer called Blake Snyder, who was an American screenplay writer. And Save the Cat, the actual concept, it comes from old sort of movies and TV shows where the fireman goes up the tree, saves the cat early in the drama, and the audience immediately warms to them. They're, oh, look, they can't be all bad. They've saved that cat from the tree. And it's a technique that we apply. Can we do this with our protagonists? Now, this isn't to say by any means that we make them an angel. You know, you can create a really troubling and problematic central character. I mean, personally, I'd argue it's even better if you can do that. But early on in the play, you need for that character to do something that gets the audience on their side and makes the audience want to follow their journey. Otherwise, as I say, you've got an audience that can switch off pretty quickly. The second suggestion, and it's something that we were already starting to experiment with in those exercises, is about using multiple characters. And when you create these other characters to fill this world, really work hard and focus on giving them a very unique voice. Now, we talk about this a lot, don't we, in script writing, you know, the old sort of classic sort of exercise whereby you write out all the dialogue in a play, take away the characters' names, and you should be able to work out, even without the names, which character's saying what line. But even more so in a one-person show, really create some unique voices for these characters, because this in turn allows the actor to create those vivid distinctions between the main narrative voice and the other contributing voices that weave the story. And this in turn just allows the audience to understand what's going on, nice and clear, nice and clear. Use multiple locations. Move wherever you want from scene to scene. Really take the audience on that journey. And this, I suppose, in a way, this goes back to the inherent theatricality of one-person shows. You know, we don't usually have a sort of traditional set and it all happens in the living room of a house. You know, we can go where we want. If we want to be, you know, if we want to be in the kitchen and then suddenly we're appearing as a contestant on Pointless, you know, we can do that. We can play around with things like that. We can explore. We can go on adventures. You know, we can make Adam, our director, work hard as well, you know, in turning this script around. And trust your directors, trust your design team to be able to move between locations. Something in a play I wrote a couple of years back and bringing back later this year, a one-person show. It was the first time really I'd thrown a lot over to the lighting and sound designer and really collaborated with them on the writing of the script. Previously, I'd kind of written, you know, myself, and then the light and sound was added in. But just being able to use light and sound as well, you know, with what you're creating, it can just open up so much. So really don't be afraid to go where you want, to push it. You know, that, as you say, that's the director and the designer's job, is to then pick it up and say, right, what can we do with this? And it's, you know, hopefully it's fun for them as well. But don't hold back. You know, excitement and invention are rewarded in one-person shows. This next one ties in a little bit with the exercise we wrote about, you know, being economical with word count and using punchy language, but try and keep that plot and action unfolding. You know, we do have to work a little bit harder to keep our audience, you know, engaged. In more conventional plays, you know, you can allow for those longer scenes of dialogue between two or more characters, and the audience are kind of working their way around the stage, taking in all the different actors. And we don't quite have that luxury in a one-person show. We want to keep the action moving along as we go, keep the plot unfolding. And then, yeah, the final one, just to reiterate, play some more, you know, enjoy being mischievous and don't feel constrained. Now, the one last thing I'd like to look at is the unreliable narrator. Now, this is quite a sort of classic literary device, but if we apply it to our one-person show, it's really powerful because, as we say, for the audience, they've sort of signed a contract with us on, you know, with our performer on stage, with our protagonist, our storyteller, and we can have some fun with our audience as a result. So an unreliable narrator is essentially an untrustworthy storyteller used in narratives with a first-person perspective. The unreliable narrator is either deliberately deceptive or unintentionally misguided. But what it does is it forces the audience to question their credibility as a storyteller. And it just makes the play start to work at a whole different level when you've got an audience saying, right, I'm going along with this, but do I actually trust the person I'm on this journey with? And that creates a fascinating dynamic in the relationship. Some classic examples of unreliable narrators would be American Psycho, Gone Girl, Fight Club. So it adds extra drama, it plays with the audience's emotions throughout the journey of the play. Now, the following template I'm going to talk about is a book by William Riggin called Picaro's Madmen, Naifs and Clowns. I'll stick it into the chat at the end of the session. And these are archetypes, I guess, for what shape our unreliable narrator might take. So the first one is the Picaro, or the rogue. Now, this is a character who has a knack for being boastful and exaggerating, confusing our audience, bragging, overdoing it. Couple of classic literary examples. Moll Flanders in the book of the same name by Daniel Defoe was born to a mother in prison but lies about her social standing in order to wed wealthy men and inherit their money. Humbert, the main character in Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, sort of dazzles us with self-importance whilst unashamedly articulating a story about his own paedophilia. So that's the rogue. Embellishes, exaggerates. The second archetype is referred to as the madman. And it's the character who is sort of mentally detached from reality, depicted as sort of insane, maniacal. The classic one, of course, would be Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. So you've got Patrick Bateman, is a self-proclaimed serial killer, or is he? Wall Street investment banker who narrates this killing spree he goes on until it's revealed that one of his supposed victims is alive and well, which forces us to question Bateman's story. The detachment from reality is the key to that archetype. The third one is the naif. The naif is naive or innocent. And the naif's narrative abilities are impacted by inexperience or age, leading to limited and often immature perception. Couple of classic literary examples of that. Holden Caulfield in J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, youthful ignorance. And Mark Haddon's Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Of course, Simon Stevens sort of turned it into a play. You've got 15-year-old boy Christopher, who weaves this sort of tale of a supposedly deceased mother and the murder of a neighbour's dog, but both his age and his Asperger's syndrome sort of colour his narrative, and they give him a sort of naivety and innocence. The fourth one is the clown. And the clown is a character who revels in playing tricks, joking and teasing the audience, characterized by a playfulness that leads to a distortion of events. Some classic examples. If anyone's read Lawrence Stern's The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Tristram Shandy is perhaps the archetype in all of this. And if anyone's seen the film La Vita è Bella, Life is Beautiful, Roberto Benigni plays a father who creates a sort of fantastical world to protect his son from the horrors of being in a concentration camp. And our final archetype is the liar, which is pretty much just what it says on the tin. The liar, it's the most deliberate of all the unreliable narrators, really. With the other archetypes, the other unreliable narrators, there are factors why we can see why they're being unreliable. But the liar just fabricates stories, often to paint a better picture of themselves or achieved a desired outcome. Quite a famous literary example of this in Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Dr. James Shepherd is our narrator, and throughout the story, he's helping Poirot investigate the murder of their mutual friend, and he sort of becomes Shepherd, a trusted confidant. But as Poirot solves the crime, we realise that we've been fooled, and Shepherd, the narrator, is actually the killer. So that would be the liar. And finally, just a few suggestions on how you can use the unreliable narrator. How can we sort of weave that into our plot? Some exercises for you to maybe have a little think about trying with your writing. So one suggestion is to make the narrator seem very clever. For a lie to work, careful planning is needed. Liars have to cover all bases, and they have to think about how their lies might be discovered, by whom, and how to avoid that from happening. This is why, if your narrator is going to tell a lie, making them clever, intelligent, it's the easiest way to pull off turning them into a memorable, unreliable narrator. Liars must work hard to keep their lie from being discovered. Something you can do which can make the audience sort of sit up and take notice. Make your narrator do something out of character. So your narrator, who appears to be of a, sort of fine, upstanding, very sort of level demeanor, something out of character, then their reliability is immediately called into question. So have them do something that surprises the audience, especially if this is, the plan is to wait until later in the action to make the unreliability a part of the story's twist, for example. If you plot in fairly early on, something a little bit out of character that we go, okay. Not sure about that. Making the narrative voice authentic, you know, this goes back to that idea of sort of the audience trusting our narrator, you know, initially. Keep their behavior authentic and believable. And keep your audiences in the dark, you know, with multiple performer plays. Quite often, you know, the audiences are learning things scene to scene that the other characters who aren't in those scenes don't yet know. Flip it around with a one-person show. You know, have the narrative voice withhold certain information from the audience. See how that impacts the story. And one other suggestion is have your protagonist misplace their trust in someone. Who turns out to be, you know, a dubious character. Or have them give a really positive opinion, you know, about this dubious character. Or flip it. Have them dislike or give a negative opinion on a character that turns out to be good. Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban. Harry spends most of that novel sort of denouncing Sirius. He's this sort of murderer, serial killer. Turns out to be a good guy at the end. Had to get a Harry Potter reference in there, you know. Just spend the next few minutes until 10 past, and then from 10 past, what we'll do, I'll take any questions. Just spend the next few minutes just having a little think about either, you know, go back to the extract that you've created today and see if there's a way to weave in potentially an aspect of the unreliable narrator, or come up with an idea for a character, and then create a situation maybe in which you can fit that character into one of those archetypes: the rogue, the madman, the naif, the clown, or the liar. Just have a few minutes on that. Let's call it there. Maybe that's something you can take away and have a little more think about how you might be able to find a way to get that unreliable narrator in there on a one-person show. It really does open up quite an interesting relationship with the audience. So if there's a possibility of you doing it in writing a one-person show, I'd always recommend having a little look at that. So that's me done. Unless anyone's got any questions, open up for a bit of a Q&A now. Ask away.
I've got a question actually, Rob. It's actually something that often kind of comes up when you start, well, I found anyway, when you kind of start working on a one-person show with an actor. And it's and I'm interested to kind of hear from, you know, the writer's perspective, you know, what your answer is. Do you often have somebody that the protagonist is talking to? You know, do you have somebody in mind? I know that, you know, you talked about earlier about kind of breaking the fourth wall and, you know, that kind of theatrical, you know, playing with theatricality. But do you, you know, is it, you know, an audience or a specific person, or does it vary from like project to project?
Yeah, I think that's often a decision between the actor and director. To be fair, you know, who is it that we're telling this story to? I think from a writing perspective, I think it's just your protagonist wants to tell a story. And then I think it's a good exercise for the actor to focus in on, right, who's this aimed at? Who am I in the room with here? Who is the audience, you know? And often you can find, you know, you can pick out the audience, you know, individually and, you know, almost tell parts of the story to them. I found that work quite nicely with Away From Home, actually. Bring them in on it. Yeah, but I do think that that's something that frequently actors like to do, is go, right, you know, where is it that this is, just as a way into it, I suppose.
Great, thank you.
Ginny, yeah.
Sorry, I just I'll just lower my hand. I wouldn't write a monologue without knowing who my character was talking to. But I think that's why it's distinct about a monologue and a like a solo play with lots of stories in it. I think that's one of the differences, and I think that's one of the liberating things about writing a solo play rather than a monologue in some ways. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. You know, and it's one of another distinction, I suppose, between the monologue is that often it is right. Who am I saying this to at this moment in time? This monologue. Frequently, that I do quite a lot of work with sort of 17, 18-year-old college students looking to audition for drama schools, and frequently we're going through, we go through the monologue books and we're picking monologues out, and they come from plays and they're delivered to a character, and then it's about, right, well, let's get into that mindset. But yeah, I think from a, as I say, you may well include a monologue style, in a one-person show, and then it is very deliberately targeted at another character in the play, portrayed by the same actor, which again just creates an interesting dynamic. But yeah, generally speaking, that you're not as sort of pressured into who must this be delivered at. Johnny Temple.
Thanks, Robert. You mentioned earlier that you should use multiple locations. I wondered how you used the narrator to move scenes. Do you say, kind of at the end of the scene, on the following day in the office, this happened? How do you get from place to place?
I mean, you can, taking that example, Johnny, I would simply say, next day we're here, bang, straight into the action. Yeah, it can be as simple as that. Yeah. Jilly.
Hi, Rob. Have you ever done any plays that are like site specific? And if so, how does that affect what you write?
I've never written for something site specific, so I don't know. I'm the best person to give you any advice on that one. Sorry, Jilly. No, I wouldn't want to dish out advice. I've never written for site specific. Sorry.
That's cool.
Ben.
Yeah, so I'm writing a one-man show at the minute as part of an associate artist program at the University of Salford.
Okay.
And basically I'm wanting to make it multimedia, but I thought it was interesting what you said about kind of using your protagonist to be like the different characters. So I wanted to ask like your thoughts on using voiceover to show different characters, but then also using the protagonist. Like, I don't know, do you think there's like an act? Is there like a balance to it? Is it choosing one over the other?
I think you can do both, so long as you establish the rule, the convention early, if that makes sense. I think an audience will go with most things so long as they feel like, oh, that's the rule. So what's the reason when it's a voiceover? And why is it then sometimes the actor flips between two characters? I think it's fine to do both, just as long as you're really clear about the rules around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
No, pleasure. And good luck. Jilly.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down. Ignore me.
Love it.
Nick's got a question in the chat, actually. Do you find it easier to write one-person shows that you are going to perform yourself or for another actor?
I think it is ultimately easier it is easier to write for yourself because you know how you're going to say it, But I think that if I was writing for another actor, I would want to get to know the other actor and talk with them about, the idea for the show, listen to the way they talk, listen to, the patterns of speech. I find that's quite interesting with another performer. But similarly, don't be afraid just to say, do you know what, I trust my own voice on this. You know, like with writing any play. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember particularly a few years ago, and still the case, and actually, you know, some examples that people talk about previously, but you know, that the very kind of personal autobiographical one-person show where people are kind of dealing with things, lived experience and things that they've gone through themselves, and like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of thinking through it, but like, you know, do you think there's something more personal about writing a one-person show, you know, something that kind of creeps in, or do you think, you know, that's just a choice you make at the outset as a writer about fiction and reality?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think, you know, so looking at it almost from a producer perspective, it's an easier thing to get on, just financially, just it's you know, an easier thing to put together. So if I'm setting out and thinking, right, well, I want to tell my story, what is the sort of the most accessible way for me straight away to do that? I think that's why people do initially, you know, go to the one-person show. And I think if you're writing from personal experience, then, and you are a performer yourself, then you are going to feel like, well, I am the best person to tell this story, you know. And I think that's probably why people do end up in that situation. But I do think, you know, again, one-person shows are very fringe friendly, very festival friendly. They're easy to tour. So you know, thinking almost with the business head on as well, you know, if you wanted to take this further, there's something there, you know, with them. There really is. You can get your story out there. And I think a lot of people who are writer performers, I mean, I'd almost encourage it, you know, find a story that means something to you. And if that is from personal experience or close family or friend experience, whatever it is, I think that will really power you through it. Yeah. Thanks, Ginny. Any other questions? Oh, Claire, yeah.
So as what would be your top starting tip for an actor performer who wants to do that, who wants to start sort of making their own work, telling their own stories, you know, possibly with the aim of touring it or going to Fringe and theatre, and obviously you managed to navigate the halls of Arts Council funding and all of those. What would you say? What would be your top tips?
Definitely. No, it's a great question. And my advice would be, ask yourself a really honest question. Why would an audience, why does an audience need to see this? Why is this relevant to today? This is my story. I want to share it. But what is it that makes it pressing and urgent and means people should come and see this show, other than the brilliant writing and the brilliant performance that I've got no doubt you'll give, Claire? But what else is there in there? You know, what is it in there that goes, yeah, this is a show people need to see?
Great, thank you, Rob. Have we got any final questions? Anybody want to ask one more burning? Yeah, Suzanne?
Yeah, I was just wondering, if you're definitely not a performer, but a writer, is getting a one-person show on, would it be a similar kind of process as getting any play on, or is there another? Would you go about it in a different way?
No, I think Suzanne, my advice would be first and foremost to find a director that you'd like to work with on it and you trust. And then I guess let it grow from there, really. You know, the director will find you the actor, you know, or could find you the right production company, or whatever avenue you choose to go down to get it staged. My advice would be find the director first. If the director can dramaturg as well, even better, you know. But that would be the route I would suggest going down. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Adam.
Yeah, I do. Like, I mean, it's really interesting working on like a one-person show. And when, you know, when I've done it, it's any play is, but there's something about that one-person show because there's the, you know, it's just the two of you kind of figuring out the story, how best to tell the story. You can't hide anywhere, you know, like, and also when you get it in a room and it's just you and the actor, then, you know, it's again, it's finding how you build a company when there's just one person. And I was thinking also, like, all, you know, throughout all this session, you know, all these tips and everything else, it's about keeping the ball up as much as anything, isn't it? And keeping that energy alive. You know, when things are, you know, like, you can't rely on, you know, the dynamic between two actors. You've got to kind of keep the story alive in other ways. But yeah.
Thank you.
Good. There's one final question in the chat. What's your best advice for a writer writing a one-person show for an actor to perform?
So I've just responded. I'd say trust your own voice, always trust your voice. Be unapologetic in telling the story that you want to tell. You know, a good actor will get that. You know, it's your story, always.
Agreed. And on that note, I think that's a fantastic place to wrap up. Thank you so much, Rob. That was a fantastic session.
Oh, pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it. Really informative.